What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Lakers Roundup and Mailbag. I will be answering some of your questions towards the back half of this video. Make sure you leave some comments down in the comment section of this video for next week's Mailbag and Lakers Roundup. Also, look forward to those community posts that I post, basically gathering all of your questions. But diving into the news for the Lakers recently. Start with the Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell front. So Atlanta is expected to very likely trade one of DeJounte Murray or Trae Young. The pairing just hasn't worked. They need to move off of one of them, and it is fully expected that they are going to move off of one of those players. Now, I would imagine Atlanta would want to move off DeJounte Murray before they move off of Trae. If they do find a suitor for Murray, it's very likely that they could end up keeping Trae Young. The Lakers actively will be pursuing Trae. They have wanted him for years. He's been linked to the Lakers since basically the draft. And he is kind of the guy that seems to be the most speculated that the Lakers will end up and potentially acquire. Now, the Lakers will have 3 first-round picks, which we have some pick news coming up, but 3 first-round picks as well as potentially 5 second-round picks. And then, of course, the salaries, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, if he opts in, and they kind of work something out. In that regard, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, plus a couple like vet minimum guys, obviously like Jalen Hood-Schifino, Maxwell Lewis, maybe even a sign and trade with Max Christie, depending on the team and what it turns out to look like. Now, Donovan Mitchell, the word is kind of that he still wants to go to a big market, that there's people that are be very surprised if he signs an extension. The Cavs say that they're confident in him signing an extension this offseason, but it doesn't really seem like there's going to be any traction in that regard. Obviously, we won't know till the offseason, but it looks like it basically boils down to the New York Knicks and the Los Angeles Lakers, that he wants to go to a big market, contend and play for a potential NBA championship, and obviously capitalize and make as much money as possible. Lakers and the Knicks suit those things. Obviously, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Donovan Mitchell is my kind of like white whale. That's kind of what I want. It's what I would be hopeful to see. I'm not against Trae Young entirely, right? If he ends up being a Laker, I'll be happy. I'll be excited, right? He's an excellent player. He's an incredible talent. I just have my concerns about the fit alongside LeBron James. I have my concerns about just the lack of defense. How do you structure the rest of the roster? I don't really... I know a lot of people are like, oh, you have to have this depth and whatnot. Look, you have 3 high-tier quality guys, and I know some people look and point to like the Phoenix Suns, but those are 3 players that are essentially the same player, especially Booker and Bradley Beal. Just doesn't make sense. But Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis absolutely makes sense. LeBron James has played with 2 other stars before, so I have the confidence that they can make it work. It's just kind of that adjustment, especially with Trae Young being so ball dominant, so ball heavy. Him and Anthony Davis would just be butter, though, especially in that pick and roll action. There would be a lot of excitement in that regard. But we'll dive more into the trade front as we get into the offseason. Hopefully, we still have a long way to go before the offseason because the Lakers are still in prime position for potentially moving into that A seed as well as getting into the NBA playoffs. But again, we'll talk about that here more in a minute. Transitioning into the pick situation. Reports came out that the New Orleans Pelicans are expected to give the Lakers this year's pick. Now, there are some pieces in this draft. There's this conversation of like, how good is this draft going to be? There's a lot of experts that have said, hey, this draft could turn out being one of the worst drafts in recent years. There's not really that high level talent. There's a couple guys, and then obviously the surprise guy or two that comes out. But basically, this season is a crapshoot. So from the Pelicans standpoint, it is kind of a risk, right? In the regard of like, okay, if the Lakers do land that other star, then chances are next year's pick is going to be just that much higher. Where right now the Lakers will probably fall in the middle of the pack. They'll probably be in the like 13 to 18 range, depending on how things shape up, where the Lakers ultimately end up landing. So that could also potentially sway the Pelicans, right? Like, so we'll see for sure, but it does make sense to some degree, kind of push it down the road a little bit. Lakers, I would be incredibly shocked if they actually draft somebody. Now, that doesn't mean that they'll have to draft somebody for another team, but they'll be able to essentially work out some type of trade, some type of deal where they can pick whoever it is and then use that to potentially make a trade. There's still also other options, right? They could always buy a pick, particularly a second round pick. If they could save this year's second round pick, maybe they could get somebody, like I know a lot of people want Zach Edey. I don't know if he falls into the second round, but maybe you could buy a late first or early second. I mean, there's talks about him kind of being in that range. Again, we'll kind of dive more into the individual players of the NBA draft coming up once we get closer again to the offseason. Again, I want to kind of keep pace one thing at a time. But it is very interesting because regardless, the Lakers, whether they take this year's pick or next year's pick, those picks are likely gone as they try to go pursue, especially if you land a Trae Young or a Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, you're going to need a little push from either of those guys. Like, hey, no, I want to go to the Lakers. If they can kind of push their way there, then that would make things a lot easier for the Lakers, kind of put the ball in their court a little bit, especially with Donovan Mitchell, because Trae still has a couple years with Donovan Mitchell. He's if you don't trade him this offseason, then that's it. He's gone. And especially if he kind of throws out the feelers of like, hey, I want to go play in LA. I want to go play with the Lakers. Then chances are he's going to end up going and playing with the Lakers, right? Because teams aren't just going to want to take that risk of like, oh, well, let me give up a bunch of assets to go get Donovan Mitchell. And then he leaves at the end of the year. And now we're out those assets. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But as far as the Lakers go in potentially getting into that 8 seed, 6 seed, it's basically a ridiculously long shot at this point. But the 8 seed is still very much in reach. At least the time of recording this video, depending on when you're watching this roundup, the Sacramento Kings had just lost, and they need to lose one more game. Warriors need to lose one more game, which the Warriors play the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans just handled business against the Sacramento Kings. Thank you for that. And then we need the Phoenix Suns to handle business against the Golden State Warriors, right? Or sorry, the Sacramento Kings, right? So if the Pelicans beat the Warriors and then the Suns beat the Kings, the Lakers, if they win outright, they would be back in control of their destiny. They should beat the Memphis Grizzlies, right? Memphis is basically sitting their entire roster at this point. So it's just, you're going up against the G League. It's inexcusable if you lose that game. Absolutely inexcusable. You have to make sure you pull out that win. Even if LeBron and Anthony Davis sit, you should be able to, again, go look at the injury. But literally, their entire roster is sitting. They're playing a bunch of G League guys, a bunch of guys that have signed 10-day contracts, stuff like that. Grizzlies are in full tank embrace mode. They're trying to find pieces that maybe could potentially help for the future, that maybe they could bring on board next season, kind of find that gem, that diamond in the rough that's like, oh, this could be a potential rotation piece. This is a guy that we like his long-term upside. So they're in that mode. Lakers need to run through them, get that over quick, then get ready for that Pelicans game. The Pelicans game very well at the end of the season could be winning in. You win that game, you're in the 8 seed, which would be great because the Denver Nuggets control their destiny for the 1 seed. Denver has stated that they want the number 1 seed, that's their goal, that they plan to actually go for it. They just beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. So if they win outright, they get the number 1 seed. So if the Lakers finish in the 9th or 10th, then they have to play and win potentially 2 road games just to get the consolation prize or the grand prize of playing the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Again, I've said I would rather play Denver in the first round than miss the playoffs entirely, right? Give me a chance. Give me an opportunity. If my choices are miss the playoffs or play Denver in the first round, I want to play Denver in the first round, right? Denver's not unbeatable. Do I like our odds? I mean, recent history, no, right? Like we've just had our struggles, and a lot of it's kind of happened and came down the exact same way, game after game after game. But to me, again, like even a puncher's chance. You see it happen. It's not like the Lakers are some slouches. You still got LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They wouldn't be healthier than in the first round. Plus, you get the days in between. You usually get like 2-3 days in between games. Obviously, that helps Denver. But LeBron James being 70 and then Anthony Davis, like they could use that rest. They could use that opportunity to kind of just like, okay, like we got 2 days before the next game. Let's heal up, get all that stuff. Like, do whatever you got to do and get back into the game to go try to win the series. But if they can move into that 7th or 8th spot, now you only need to win one game. If you win that one game, you're playing potentially the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Minnesota Timberwolves. Either of those teams, I think the Lakers can beat. The Thunder, I think the Lakers kind of run through. Minnesota, I think, would be tougher, but I fully think that the Minnesota matchup would be like Memphis last year, where it's like, oh, Lakers are going to get smacked. Maybe it's a gentleman's sweep, and the Lakers end up handling business and winning in 6. That's kind of what I think would happen with Minnesota. Just their lack of experience, right? Lakers, they're going to be really just LeBron James, Anthony Davis focused. You're going to have those two guys, basically everything running and funneling through them. They're going to do the large majority of heavy lifting. LeBron's mind and brain and how to structure and slow down. It's just, I like our odds against Minnesota. I'm not saying that they can't beat us. I'm not saying lock it in. But I definitely think the Lakers should be able to beat Minnesota in a 7-game series. And then, you end up playing, say, a Dallas or a Clipper. I think the Lakers could beat either of those teams. And then now, or maybe the Suns, I think it would be, it depends on how it shapes up with 6. But let's say it's the Suns, right? Now you're playing the Phoenix Suns. I think the Lakers can beat the Phoenix Suns in a 7-game series. I just don't trust Phoenix. Obviously they have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. You don't want to sleep on those guys. I'm not saying that they're slouches. They can absolutely win 4 games. They have enough firepower to beat anybody. But I do like the chance that the Lakers have to beat that. Now all of a sudden you're in the conference finals playing the Denver Nuggets. Right? I'll take my chances again. So hopefully, one, we can kind of get through this. I know there's kind of a lot of talk circulating, a lot of news about just moves in the offseason. I mean, obviously the trade rumors and, Lakers getting a superstar, that's year round. It's the Lakers. Anytime a star is even murmured as potentially being available, the Lakers end up going and pursuing that. As far as the draft goes, I would be a little surprised if they keep this year's pick. Again, they may draft for somebody, but to actually keep the pick and develop the kid, I would be very surprised because I think the Lakers are going to make some type of move. Will it be the big supers? Will it be the Donovan Mitchell, the Trae Young, the whatever? That I don't know, but I could see maybe like a DeJounte Murray, and then you go get some other pieces. There's multiple ways and opportunities to kind of piece this roster together, and then also whatever free agents, although Lakers' money is incredibly thin in that regard. But look, I know a lot of people are willing to just write off the Lakers and just say, hey, season's over. Not one of those people. People were saying the same thing last year. We were in the conference finals. Do we have and need a lot of dominoes to fall, and do we have a lot of work ahead of us? Absolutely. But until the Lakers are eliminated, they're not eliminated. Right, so even if you think it's slim, even if you think it's unlikely, it's still a chance, right? And I like the way that they match up against anyone in the play-in, right? So to me, it's just my thing is everyone looks at it and goes, oh, Denver, right? Like Denver's the only team that the Lakers should be worried about. Denver's the only team that the Lakers just can't seem to beat. Everyone else, the Lakers should be able to beat. But then we get to the play-in and everyone's like, the Lakers are done. So which is it? Are the Lakers capable of beating anybody other than Denver, or are the Lakers not? Because all we've heard, even from people that are calling the Lakers that's it, it's a wrap, it's done. Even those people, a month ago were talking about how oh man, as long as we don't play Denver, we're winning the championship. And now it's Lakers are cooked. What? I just don't get it. Again, it's a very big long shot. I'm not saying lock it in by any stretch. I wouldn't bet on it, right? But once they get into the playoffs, I trust them in the playoffs. I don't necessarily trust them to get there, but I do trust them once we get there. Because again, it's just the one and done format. It's so hard, right? It's just, you see it in football, you see it in college basketball, just one fluke game. You might beat a team 9 out of 10 times, but if that one time the team ends up beating you, that's it, right? You don't have to be the better team. You just have to be better one night. And can one of these teams best the Lakers one night? Absolutely, right? That's what's going to make this so great. And just the playoffs in general, I think is going to be really exciting. Last little point of news, or lack thereof, I should say, is in regards to Jared Vanderbilt. We were supposed to get news on Jared Vanderbilt at the beginning of this week. We are now close to the end of this week. It's Friday when I'm recording this video. So, depending on, unless we get some news later today, that could always be a real possibility. So look forward to that. But he was supposed to be reevaluated, and it's looking like that very well might not be the case. I mean, we got 2 games left. Our last game is on Sunday. So, I mean, is he really going to come back for the last game of the season? Possibly. Brandon Ingram, right, of course. Right? He's not coming back for the back-to-back road trip where he'd be hugely helpful for a team that if they win, they're the 6th seed. Right? Like if they win out, they're the 6th seed. But he's coming back for the Laker game. Coming back for the last game of the season. You can't make this stuff up, I swear. It's so funny how this always plays out this way. But, guys start coming back. You see him come back. Karl Anthony Towns is coming back from Minnesota. He's supposed to play, I believe, in their second to last game. So maybe Jared Vanderbilt, that happens. But I just think that they'll leave him and kind of hopefully he'll be a big surprise come the playoffs. I don't even think necessarily he'll play in the play-in because the play-in is the first game is the 16th. So the Lakers, I mean, we're less than a week away from the actual play-in games. So, are you really going to bring him in when you're in an elimination game? Look, Jared Vanderbilt is incredible. His hustle, his drive, all that stuff. But he's still going to need a little time to kind of get into the flow of things. Like, could you bring him in and just kind of have him play 10 to 12 minutes and just kind of be a designated defensive guy? Sure, I absolutely think you kind of do that and get away with that. But it's just, I have my concerns about just bringing him in because how does he look? He looked a little off, right? When he missed the time before, came back, it took him like a handful of games, a little more than a handful of games to really start seeing Jared Vanderbilt where you're like, oh, there he is, like the whole, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme, so we need that. If we get that Jared Vanderbilt back, I mean, watch out. Sky's the limit at that point. I know people think how much of an impact will Jared Vanderbilt make? A ton. Talking about one of the best, if not the best, on-ball defensive players in the league. Talk about a guy that is nothing but pure energy, effort, and hustle. The live ball turnovers that he creates, the turnovers in general he creates, the balls that he keeps alive on the rebounding side of things, right? Batted balls, all that stuff. Him on the offensive glass, him on the defensive glass. The Lakers are doing an excellent job of having him, because of the 5-out offense, allowing him to be an effective offensive player. There's a lot of things that Jared Vanderbilt would wholeheartedly add value to this Lakers team. I mean, he's a huge piece for us. And all of our best lineups this season are still with Jared Vanderbilt. Just because, again, he covers so much ground. He's just so impactful in so many ways. Does Jared Vanderbilt all of a sudden make us the clear-cut number 1 team in the league? No. But he makes us better. He makes us obviously better. I mean, you could see it on the court. The Lakers are running through people. I mean, go watch that Boston Celtics game without LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Tell me Jared Vanderbilt isn't going to make an impact. Like, the guy is insane. But hopefully we get him back. To me, don't force it. Right? Like, if he's healthy and he's good to go, then let's get it. Right? Bring him in whenever. Right? But to me, it's like, if it's kind of like, hey, it's a go, but if you overexert yourself a little too much, you're running the risk of injury further or whatever. To me, it's like, I just feel leave him out as long as possible, right? Like, because last thing you want is him to come back, him tearing or ripping something, knock on wood, and now he misses half of next year or most of next year. And it's like, man, here goes 2 years now without Jared Vanderbilt. We can't afford it. Not just this year, but going forward. He's too valuable for this team. He's too valuable of a piece. So if it's something where he can't return, which we were never out of the woods with Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt was always something that we knew was very unlikely, but there was like fingers crossed hopefulness that he would be able to bounce back quick enough for him to return. And then, he's doing the resistant band and he's doing all the training in the weight rooms and stuff, but he's still, again, we don't have an update, but it's odd that if he was close to a return, you think that they would give us something. Now, maybe it's something along the lines of like they're kind of gauging to see, like, okay, well, if we're 9th or 10th, then why bring Jared Vanderbilt back until we get to the playoffs? So let's just wait. But it's like, okay, if we, let's say we win outright and all of a sudden we're in the 8th seed or maybe even the 7th seed, depending on how things shape up. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we should bring Vando back for that game. Where it's like, okay, if we're the 9th or 10th, we'll give him that rest for that game. And then if we win that game, then he can come back. Otherwise, we'll just kind of leave him out. It could be something where they're just kind of gauging it and trying to see how it plays out. But we'll see. Time will tell in that regard. But anyway, let's get into some of the mailbag questions that you guys left. Again, please look forward to those or look out for the community posts. I think I might do them multiple a week. I kind of just been doing one right now, but I think I'll do like 2 or 3 throughout the course of the week for you guys to kind of be able to leave comments, questions for me to answer and all that stuff. And then, of course, down in the comments of this video, just leave a couple questions for me to answer potentially next week. So we'll see how that goes. And we'd be in the thick of the play-in at that point. So maybe we'll do an earlier one, diving in before the play-in, kind of run down the situation in that regard. But diving in the first question, coming from Kyle Leary. Do you think Darvin Ham should have been developing some of their young talent, such as Giles, Castleton, so they'd be useful at this point in the season? I've seen the Warriors do it every season, and it works out well for them. You could, like, doing so wouldn't have hurt. Well, first, Harry Giles, a couple things. Like, I know you mean just the young players in general, but the two that you mentioned, one, Colin Castleton was injured for like 2 months, and then you had Harry Giles, who just came back, which I am disappointed that he hasn't gotten as much of a run, as much of an opportunity, but I think a lot of it is just the Warriors kind of don't have any other options, right? Like this year, like if they didn't have Pod and they didn't have Trace, and they didn't have these young guys that have been really good for them this year, they would be in trouble. They'd be like 5-6 guys deep. They've kind of had to develop those guys at a necessity, where when you looked into the offseason, coming into the season, it was like, dude, how are we going to find, there's no way we're going to get minutes for Jalen Hood-Schifino. There's no way we're going to get minutes for Maxwell Lewis. There's no way we're going to get minutes for Colin Castleton and all these guys, right? Because it was like, man, we got this deep, talented roster that's like 15 guys deep, right? Even Max Christie, it was like, is he going to be able to find minutes? Max Christie is the only one that I kind of wish we would have played a little more, right? Now that we're in like desperation mode, okay, it's like, who are you playing him over? I guess Cam Reddish, you could play him over Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish has just been really bad lately, although he was really good for us in the beginning. So kind of a lot of it is also just Darvin Ham, period. Would I have liked to see the Lakers kind of piece guys in to actual rotation minutes? Like, something that I've talked about is like, I've been defensive of Jalen Hood-Schifino. A lot of people are willing to write him off as a bust. A lot of people are like, oh, look in the minutes he has gotten, which have all basically been garbage time minutes. There's no real structure in garbage time minutes. They're not playing real basketball. They're just out there jacking up shots and trying to weather and kill the clock. Like, that's what their job is, right? And guys are trying to prove themselves. It's just, you're not playing structured, organized, actually running sets. Jalen Hood-Schifino has the ball and he's initiating and setting up the offense and calling the plays out and stuff, where you really get to see what he can potentially be and do. So I would have liked to see them potentially get him, Maxwell Lewis, those kind of guys. Again, the problem is that like Jalen Hood-Schifino ended up getting hurt on several occasions. Colin Castleton, he ended up getting hurt on several. A lot of it, I think, has been 2 parts. One, Darvin Ham and him just going with the veteran guys, which I get. It's like, who do you play these guys over, right? Like, are you really playing? I mean, you could maybe play Colin Castleton, especially when so the recent games, I don't like that we're not playing Giles or Castleton, right? Like in the Warriors. Like, you have 2 7-footers literally sitting on your bench. Like, I can see them. Why aren't they, and they're like suited up, why aren't they at least getting some run? Play them 5 minutes. You're getting smacked right now and getting out hustled and out rebounded. You can't get worse. Like, put them out there. So I wish we would have kind of sprinkled them in. However, I also think if the Lakers did their job and we weren't in the desperate situation we're in right now, and the Lakers from the jump handled business throughout the way, I do think that those guys may have gotten some more minutes. I do think there would have been a little more experimentation with Jalen Hood-Schifino, Colin Castleton, Maxwell Lewis, and those guys, right? Because if you did what you needed to do, you're not desperate. You're not like, I need to play LeBron James, Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, basically my starting 40 minutes a game right now, right? Like now it's like, okay, hey, we can kind of, let's rest LeBron and AD. Let's see what Maxwell Lewis can do in heavy minutes. Let's see what Colin Castleton can do in heavy minutes. You know, we're playing Portland or something like that, right? Like, what do they look like? Can they hold their own? Are these real NBA players? I just think a lot of it has just been a product of the situation that the Lakers are in, unfortunately, which is incredibly frustrating. But yeah, you know how that goes. Kevin Smith, assuming we make the playoffs and the Pels let us keep our pick, do you believe the Lakers could go after Zach Edey out of Purdue or use the pick to try for Nick Claxton sweepstakes? So I personally dove into the Pelicans pick. So first off, the Pelicans are, for those that maybe fast forward to the mailbag part, basically the Pelicans are expected to let the Lakers keep this year's pick. That happens, I do not see the Lakers actually drafting anybody for themselves. More likely than not, what'll happen is they'll draft for another team. So say Atlanta, and they go and make the trade for Trae Young, just using it as an example. My guess is that if that happens, then what they'll do is Atlanta, who do you want? And then they'll draft and pick that guy for Atlanta. Think of like, what was it, DeAndre Hunter, right? Like, good example. So to me, I don't think that now, I talked about this earlier, right? The Zach Edey situation, right? If he falls late in the first or early second, right? Say we get to the second round, do the Lakers maybe try to move up? Or potentially, like, if they have, let's say they have the Trae Young deal done and it's like, hey, we have this year's second and next year's second. Maybe we could take those 2 seconds and move up and potentially snag Edey. Then possibly. The other thing is the concerns about just like, and like I said, I'll dive into players and stuff like that more because you never know, right? Lakers, who knows? If they can't find a deal, they can't find a trade, then they very likely could take some guys. But I'll start doing deep dives once we get into the offseason, deep dives on these players and kind of break them down and give my thoughts in more in depth. But the real concern with Zach Edey is how will he translate to the NBA, right? Like he's closer to a traditional center, which you can argue the NBA is kind of favoring that a little bit. Like a lot of the centers are more back to the baskets, but they can still stretch the floor. Zach Edey, I think he could potentially get there. It's just, how does he operate and will he be able to defend out of the pick and roll, which is going to be a big thing because otherwise teams are just going to spin cycle him. Is he going to be able to be a starting caliber center or is he more likely a reserve that's coming off the bench? If that's the case, like, are you better off developing Colin Castleton, who he's kind of got a similar skill set, but he might actually be the better passer and playmaker out of the post? Like Jackson Hayes, I think it just depends. Do you just go and I would rather, and again, if they draft Zach, I'm all for it, right? I'm not going to complain about it, right? Because the Lakers, I trust the Lakers and their decisions. Their draft department has been excellent. I fully expect them to, if they draft him, that they fully believe he's a guy. But to me, I feel like you have your project centers in Castleton, in Jackson Hayes, if he sticks around and he stays, to where to me, I'd rather you develop them and mold them and shape them. Now, if let's say Jackson Hayes ends up leaving for a bigger bag or something like that, then maybe you could look to do that, right? You kind of get a gauge before the draft of like, hey, you know, what's your plan here? Are you trying to get paid because we're not going to be able to pay you what you think you deserve? Or are you willing to kind of opt in your contract and ride this out for another year and then we'll kind of figure it out and stay under the Lakers banner and we can grow and develop you? So to me, I think it depends in that regard. But to me, I mean, depending on where the Lakers land, you want to take the best player available. Obviously, you want to, if you can get both, where it's like the best player available, but also, or, it's close, where it's like this guy may be slightly better or a little better upside, but this guy is equally as good, but, maybe not the upside, but he's more of a position of need, then I think you go that route. I just think it depends where the Lakers land in the draft, if they keep the draft, and then also, who's actually available. But the Knicks Claxton, as far as the Nick Claxton sweepstakes goes, that's something where he's probably getting paid, and I do like the idea of Claxton and Anthony Davis. Like, man, that shot blocking and that interior defense, good luck. But one, are the Nets going to be willing to work something out in that regard? Lakers are kind of limited, right? I mean, well, they could go and trade for him, but it's like, are they really going to give up first-round picks to go get Nick Claxton when they'll probably want to hoard and save that for a star? Right? Maybe if the star part falls through and they can work it out to get Nick Claxton, or maybe Nick is like, hey, I want to go elsewhere, I want to play for another team, then maybe. But Nick Claxton, I think personally, and we'll dive more because I'm sure we'll get more information as we get and move into the offseason to where we'll kind of have a better gauge and understanding. But my thing is like, I don't necessarily think he's going to be something, right? To me, I think your best hope is you can convince so if you get your I think they'll have like the taxpayer mid-level. Can you convince Valanciunas, like, hey, come take taxpayer mid-level for us, right? Because I mean, he's only making like $12 million this year. So no, hey, can you take the taxpayer mid-level this year, take a chance to win a championship, right? Be a big key integral part in the season. You're gonna play a ton of minutes at the 5. Whenever Anthony Davis or LeBron miss a game, which collectively they're gonna miss probably 20 plus games at least. Again, collectively, so all those games you'll get to start. And then you're going to be the first big off the bench to where, like, hey, you're going to play 30 minutes, or maybe you do try to play him alongside LeBron. Like, let's say you get Donovan Mitchell, right? Maybe you could work it out to, I don't know, you go like Gabe Vincent, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, Valanciunas, and Anthony Davis. Possibly. Again, some of those things may end up being a long shot, but you never know. I mean, guys take discounts all the time, especially if he wants to play in LA, play alongside Anthony Davis, play along LeBron James. He might look at it as like, hey, this could be a real opportunity for me. So we'll see. Time will tell. But again, great question, Kevin. Really, really do appreciate that. Role play with Ray. Tyler, do you think Jared Vanderbilt is a bad defensive matchup for Brandon Ingram? I mean, Brandon Ingram is, well, the numbers, no. Numbers say no. But Brandon Ingram is one of those rare kind of anomaly players, right? He's one of those players that, like, he's got that size, that length. He's good at getting his position. He's like, a poor man's Kevin Durant in a lot of ways, right? Like, Kevin Durant is like the gold standard. He's like the B version, which, I mean, he's still ridiculous. Like, don't get me wrong. But, like, where is Brandon Ingram? Is he top 30 player, maybe? Right? Like, he's not top 5, top 10, anything like that. And historically great, right? Like, he's excellent. And so, I mean, talking about a guy that's that long, lengthy, kind of twitchier wing that has, power forward height, that it can be difficult to really disrupt him and bother him. And then that long wings, he has like a 7'3" wingspan, so the release is high, all that stuff. So for Jared Vanderbilt, I mean, he's had success against Brandon Ingram. He's had success against CJ and Luka and Kyrie, and I mean Anthony Edwards. I mean, he's put Anthony Edwards in prison. It's wild. But I don't necessarily think I don't think it's a bad matchup. I just think Brandon Ingram's an awkward matchup. Just like Kevin Durant is an awkward matchup. Never going to stop those guys. You're just trying to slow them down. Can you make them work? Right? So Brandon Ingram, instead of him getting 25 points on 50% shooting, can he get 25 points on, 45% shooting? Because that means he's taking more shots, he's missing shots. Like, that can be the difference between you winning or losing that game. Or instead of him making 20 or getting to 25, maybe he only drops 20, right? Like, again, that could be the difference between you winning or losing that game. It's something that plays a factor. But I don't think it's a bad matchup. I just think it's an awkward matchup. Tyler, who do you think is a better player, Grayson Allen or Kevin Huerter? I like Allen. I just think he's more of a hard nose, he's better at the dirty work. And I don't mean that in the sense of like Grayson Allen. I mean, he's known as like a dirty player going back to Duke, right? Like, I mean, they were talking about like suspending him in college and stuff like that. People were petitioning to have him like kicked out of the league and out of college and stuff for some of the antics. Yeah, you could tell he's matured a little bit, but he's like leading the league in like three-pointers made or 3-point percentage. One of those two. Like, he's been very good shooting the basketball. And then again, just the hustle plays, the dirty work, sacrificing his body. He's kind of like that blue collar type, hard hitting type player, which I just like where he's at. Where Kevin Huerter's kind of more of like the quick release, more finesse type 2-guard, right? Like, Grayson Allen, I think like you can get away with him as a starter depending on what the other pieces are around you. Just for him just being that aggressive guy that it's those pests, right? Those guys like the Jose Alvarados of the world, right? Whether they're relentless, they're pushing, they're Patrick Beverly, right? Like they're willing to do the non-pretty work. You need those guys. You need guys like that. And Alex Caruso is like an elite version of that, right? A guy that can hit the shot, but also just he's willing to do the dirty work. He's willing to do the hustle plays. No, you look at, you want to go back a little bit, think of guys like, Derek Fisher or Trevor Ariza when we won the championship, right? Him being that dirty work player, him being the guy that will go chase down the loose balls and sacrifice his body and, take on the tough defensive assignment and be able to hit the open shots. Things like that, I think, go a long way when you're talking about just like a guy like Grayson Allen. So personally, for me, I like Grayson Allen. I just think overall, he's the better overall player. Tyler, do you think the Wizards are a bad matchup for the Lakers? Well, considering the Lakers won both times, no. To me, it's the Lakers just playing down to competition. I don't think it's them being a bad matchup. I think, one, it's the Lakers. Every team shows up against the Lakers. Every guy that's injured magically heals and he plays. Right? Even Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma missed like a handful of games. All of a sudden, they're playing the Lakers. Time to suit up. Right? Like Brandon Ingram's missed the last 10 games. He's going to miss like 11 or whatever, but he's coming back for the Laker game, right? So I just think it's the Lakers. We're going to ball out. We're going to show up. I also think it's part of like, just the Lakers not being very serious. Although, I mean, they were in control of both of those games and they kind of just like, again, let up, right? Like that first game where we ended up going in an overtime against them. We were dominating them up until like that fourth quarter. And then we just started getting silly and just playing the wrong way, and all of a sudden we're in overtime, and it's like, uh-oh, right? But then luckily the Lakers handled business, and then you look into the more recent game in Washington. I just think it's Lakers on the road. They haven't been good on the road this year, which is my concern for the play-in games. If they have to play 2 road games, they just haven't been very good on the road. They haven't been a team that's been able to prove that they can beat quality teams on the road. Right, they beat Milwaukee and Boston and stuff like that, but consistently. But to me, it was just kind of more of just Lakers playing down to the competition. Lakers on the road. Every team again on any given night. I mean, Washington literally beat Milwaukee. The game before they were coming off? I think they beat the Bucks right before our game, or it was right before our game. So again, any given night, any team can beat anybody. But I don't think it's a bad matchup. I don't think I think it's just a young team that's they're trying to ball out and like, oh man, this is prime time. We're on TV. All the baddies are watching. You know how Jordan Poole is when he sees a honey in the stands, man. That dude turns into prime Michael Jordan. It's ridiculous. But no, in all seriousness, that's kind of what I boil it down to. I don't think it's anything of concern. And look, we won't have to worry about them or play with them throughout. But Anyway, so again, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below on everything. Again, leave some questions for next week's mailbag. Like I said, I might try to do it a little early depending on how things shape up. If the Lakers are I might try to do it right before the first play-in game, to where it's like, okay, like maybe we have some information, some insight, get some updates, things in that regard. But yeah, definitely look out for those community posts. Make sure you leave comments down in the comment section for this for me to answer as far as questions go. Let me know your thoughts on all the topics and points that covered today. Make sure to like the video. Really appreciate you guys because, again, you guys are awesome. And I really do enjoy this mailbag thing, kind of doing this roundup and then finishing it off with the mailbag. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's great. A lot of you seem to really enjoy this, so we're going to continue this going forward. So again, really appreciate you guys. Again, let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. So if you enjoy these types of videos, I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.